All right, I'm just going to actually turn my whole computer here so I can make this be a little easier. All right, awesome. So share screen, and we're going to share this screen and go. All right, can everybody see that okay? Oh, Pete, anybody? Can you guys see that all right?
I can see it.
Yeah, it looks good.
All right, awesome.
I can.
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, so here we go. So basically, again, hopefully you guys are here for lead follow-up systems that work in every market. And like I said, just a little bit of a reminder, I got my license in 2004, which was just a couple years before 2007, 2008, when basically the whole market crashed. So I didn't really have a lot of leads to follow up on in the good years. And in 2006, really, especially in Central Ohio, we started to see signs of things slowing down. And so lead follow-up definitely is always an important piece in every market, but especially going into a potentially shifting market, it's even more important. So the first thing I like to talk about when we're talking about lead follow-up is what is the life cycle of a lead. So in my opinion, there's really three parts to the lead, to the life cycle of a lead. The first part is is definitely the most widely talked about part, and that is lead generation. So obviously you have to have a lead in the first place in order to have something to follow up on. And so you have to do things like open houses, pay per click, Facebook leads, referrals, sign calls, networking, you name it, client events, all of those things. But then there's the second part of the life cycle of a lead, which is probably the second most popular, is kind of the active client portion. So whether if it's a seller, it's going to be listing the home, or if it's a buyer, it's going to be searching for homes. And then I would consider that portion of the life cycle of a lead also to include the contract to close portion. And so I would say that second piece probably accounts for about the last 7 to 10 weeks of the life cycle of a lead. And then you've got really everything in between, as I've got one of my sons crawling on the floor to hand me my glasses. Thanks, buddy. And so does anybody know what that portion is called there in the middle? Come on, somebody's got to guess it. The hint is that it's the name of the class. You guys are really going to do this to me, huh? All right. Lead follow-up. Lead follow-up is the middle section. And the reason I love
is this a lead, so this class is lead follow-up? Because
yes.
you said how to find business in any market is what it said. That's why.
Yeah, using lead follow-up system.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So the lead follow-up portion of the life cycle of a lead is super important, and it's the piece that most people actually skip out on. You know, the reality is if we think about it, very few of us struggle, if we're being honest with ourselves, of having opportunities. The problem, what we struggle with most, like Pete was saying, and I don't know, there weren't very many of you guys on the call when Pete, because he was the first one, but I asked him how things were going, and he said he had done a few open houses. And so he said he had met quite a few people that were looking to buy a home. But beyond that, he didn't really know a lot about them and kind of where they were in the process. And so that's why lead follow-up is so critical and important, because the reality is most people, the day that you meet them, are not ready to go ahead and write an offer. And so this is really the second way to put this into graphical form. And basically what we're representing here is we're representing kind of the life cycle of the lead from the perspective of this right here at the top of this point is going to represent the first time that somebody buys a home. So they bought a home. The next day is the time where they're the least likely to purchase another home, which makes complete sense, right? And then every single day after that, they get more and more likely to buy another home. And they also get closer to making that happen. What these tick marks represent on the line is where you're meeting them in that process. So Pete, sometimes if we use the open house as an example, because I think it's one of the best examples to represent lead follow-up, we might meet a client when they just bought a house just down the street from your open house, and they closed 6 months ago, and they're finally settled in, and now they're ready to start changing things around. And so your clients just did a big remodel on their kitchen, and they're walking in to find out, what can we do to our kitchen in order to make it better? Now, most of us would talk to that person, maybe depending on how busy the open house is, we would have a conversation with them. We may or may not ask them to sign in, depending on how, how much you force people to do that. And then they would go on their merry way. And I would ask you the next day, how many people came into your open house? And you would say something like, well, there were 3 people that had an agent. There were 2 neighbors. And then there was 1 person that came in who was unrepresented, and I'm hoping to get a consultation with them. And so what we're doing in that situation is, we've got 2 people here. Those are maybe the 2 neighbors. And then we've got 4 people up here. 3 of them had an agent already, so you're throwing them out. And so we're going to focus all of our attention when it comes to follow-up, when it comes to our focus on just that 1 person. But what we missed out on are those 2 neighbors. Now, granted, they might have an agent that they might call, they might not. But the reality is, what would it look like if you put those 2 people into your database and then dripped on them over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years? And when they're ready to sell, you're going to own their real estate mindshare, which we'll talk about in just a second. So basically, what I'm getting across with this graph is that every person that you ever talk to is somewhere on this graph. The question is where, and what is it going to take to move them to the next tick mark? Sometimes it's just time, right? It's like life circumstance, but other times it's giving them a piece of information. And so as we go through this, that's a really fundamental part about lead generation that so many people miss, is the idea that a lead is only somebody that's like ready to go in the next, 1 to 3 months. And in reality, how many people did you meet at open houses in 2019 that you never ever reached out to again? How many of those people were one of the 24,000 homes that have sold so far this year? And that's a question we don't know if we're not doing the follow-up. So what is it? So I'm going to make you guys unmute. So does anybody know what the average time is between home purchases?
5 to 7 years or something.
Yep, that's a good guess.
I didn't hear the guess.
5 to 7 years.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so it's actually gone up a little bit. So right now, I think the statistics are saying somewhere more in the 7 to 10 year range. But I think, as we've seen prices move up, it may be a little bit shorter than that here in Columbus. But then also with COVID, that's caused some people to decide to remodel their home instead of move. So it's a constantly moving number. But I think 7 years is definitely a really good kind of middle ground, I guess, between what we've always heard and kind of what the newer data is saying. So somewhere around 7 years. So if we think about it from that perspective, if we think about everybody as a lead opportunity that's somewhere on the cycle for 7 years, how many leads, unless you're not planning on being in the business for 7 years, how great would it be to walk into, what would that be, 2027, with every single person that you've met this year being on your list to buy or sell a home that year. And that's really the secret sauce of winning the real estate race. Is it's a long game. And so many people are so obsessed with instant gratification that they step over dollars to go pick up the penny, meaning they step over 100 leads that are going to buy in the next 2 to 4 years in order to make sure they can find the one that's going to buy right now. And so I'm encouraging you guys to continue to change your mindset. So really what a lot of agents are focused on are those active clients, those people that are going to be buying or selling a home in the next 7 to 10 weeks. And again, obviously when you get one of those, you follow up differently, right, than you do when you get somebody who's further out. And yet my whole point of this class is to talk about how do we make sure that we're not only doing what we need to do to convert those now leads, but we're also doing what we need to do in order to convert those leads that are further out. So I thought we could start with what are some follow-up standards that we could use to make sure that leads don't fall through the cracks. Because the reality is, if we're being honest with ourselves, and maybe I'll just call myself out here, but sometimes it's not the people that are buying 7 years from now that fall through the cracks. Sometimes it's the people that are buying 5 months from now that fall through the cracks. And the reality is, you know, most people that we meet, especially when we're talking about sellers, they're not ready to put their house on the market next week. And so it's super, super important to have really solid and airtight short-term follow-up plans in place to make sure that you're not missing out on any of those people that are 6 to 12 months out. So what I have here are kind of like the rules of thumbs or standards that I use to make sure that I'm staying in touch with my people. And so I would encourage you to make this your basic minimum criteria. And then if nothing else, add on to here. So if I meet a buyer or seller, let's say at an open house, my minimum standard is that I'm reaching out to them once per week, minimum. So let me see, we get somebody, Dawn Finch is waiting in the waiting room. So I'm reaching out to them once every single week, preferably in the form of a text, or in the form of a phone call, but definitely at least a text, or personalized email. So meaning, you know, hey, Marcia, this is Troy Marsh. I was just calling to make sure that we're still on track for you to get your house on the market at the end of November. So remember, as we move a little bit closer to the date, we're going to finalize. Ideally, we like to have photos done by Monday, of the week that we go on the market. But so as we get a little bit closer, we'll finalize that. Call me if you have any questions. That would be an example of one. The next week, I might call or text or email them an update of what's happening in the neighborhood. So you can see my next one is set up sellers on a search for their neighborhood through the MLS. Obviously, you want to include yourself to make sure that you also know what's going on, because the worst thing is you call them and they're like, hey, can you believe that house just listed for $350 on my street? And you're like, what house? So you have to make sure that you're staying in touch and up to date with those things. But then you might, through your phone call or text message or email, you might point those things out and say, hey, I know you got the automated email about 123 Main Street that came on the market a couple days ago, but here's what that means to you. And I can give you an example of that. I'll be listing a house here. Actually, photos happened today in Lewis Center, and it's going to be listed for $575. And we weren't really sure what the fall market was going to look like. Traditionally, that's not an amazing time to list a house in that price range. And so we were kind of back and forth. They were talking about waiting until spring. And then a couple weeks ago, actually probably about 3 weeks ago, I just kind of pulled up the CMA for Lewis Center that I had set up for them just to keep me in the loop. And in 1 week at the beginning of September, 3 properties that had been on the market for more than 60 days. So one of them was like 100, one was like 59, and the other one was 70 some, went into contract all within 7 days. And so my interpretation of that, between 500 and 600, my interpretation of that is that that market was lagging behind for quite a while, but now something's happened. Either people are over COVID, people were waiting for new inventory that never showed up, and now that price range is moving. So I called my seller and I said, hey, I know you guys were thinking about waiting until spring, but here's what just happened over the last week. And, you know, if you guys still want to wait till spring, awesome. But I think as long as you guys, you know, understand that it could have been a fluke, but it also could be an opportunity with really low inventory to, you know, make sure that you get top dollar. So that's an example on that. And then with buyers, during this 1 to 3 month period, you absolutely want to have them, you know, everybody set up on what I would call an ASAP search, meaning that they're getting properties from you that fit their very specific criteria every single day. So if a new listing comes on the market at 3 p.m., they need to be getting it at 3 p.m. because obviously, as you guys know, with inventory at 50% of normal levels, we've got to make sure that we're the first ones to make it there. So then we move into the next section, which is going to be 3 to 6 months out. I would do a bi-weekly check-in via phone or text with them. I think a personalized email could be sufficient as well, but I would be careful with the email just because email can definitely more easily be lost. I would say that they need at least a 1 time per month neighborhood update, and that could either be in the form of a neighborhood nurture through command or an MLS search, which is just, you can set it so that it notifies them like every Saturday with all the activity that happened in their neighborhood. And then on buyers during this time, I'm setting them up on a daily or ASAP search, depending on how much inventory. I like them to be getting an email from me pretty regularly, again, with my info on it. And so if they're looking in a really specific area, I'm going to set them up on an ASAP search just to make sure that they're hearing from me often. And I might even say, hey guys, I know that you really want to be in Grandview in this specific price point, but I just want to show you guys, you know, or you're looking for only 2 full baths. But since inventory is so low, I'm going to set up a second search, which only sends you an email like once a day with everything that only has 1.5 baths instead of 2 full baths, just to make sure that we don't miss out on something.
Hey, Troy?
Obviously,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Do you do that from your website?
I would do that. I usually do that through the MLS.
Okay, because that's what I've been doing. Okay, good.
Yeah. Just because the MLS has the most amount of information on it. And so what I want to avoid is I want to avoid them feeling like they can go anywhere else and get more information. So the MLS has the auditor's site link on it. It has, you can actually make it so they can see the history on the property. Obviously, it has all of the stats on it. And then it's also an easy way for them to reply back to me. So yeah, and the other thing I like about the MLS is that you can set the searches up extremely detailed so that you can make sure that they're getting exactly what they want. Once they're at this stage of their search, I want to make sure that I'm giving them exactly what they're asking for. And from my perspective, the best way to do that still is through the MLS.
Troy, is the ASAP search what you label that? Name you give the actual search, or is that
No, so when you go into the MLS and save a search and add a subscription, which is what causes them to get notified, there's a weekly, or wait, what is it? Is there a monthly section? and then a weekly section, which gives you the chance to send it to them either every day or pick the day of the week that you send it to them. And then there's an ASAP search.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
And then at 6 months out, I would be doing at least a monthly check-in via phone or text. And there I would almost always do a phone or text with them versus an email, just because that 6 months, the 6 month thing is a weird time frame where if they happen to run into somebody else, like they're getting their head kind of in the game of selling, but they're not quite in the game of selling. And so you just want to make sure that you're staying in touch with them. With sellers, you want to be sending them at least one time per month, that monthly neighborhood nurture. And then with buyers, either a weekly or a daily search, again, with your info on it. Because I can promise you, for those of you that have been in the business for a while, buyers are looking somewhere at 6 months out. Now, obviously, once you get to 18 months and a little bit longer, you might choose to do something different. But the last thing is that, and we'll get to this in a second, all of these people should immediately, whenever you meet them, should immediately be going into your 36 touch program or whatever your long-term nurture is for past clients. All right, so what do we do for everybody else? So obviously, that's like our shorter term nurtures. But then like we talked about at the beginning, we've got all of these people that are, 6 months that you're like, yeah, Troy, I'll call them every month if they're like 6 to 12 months. But when people are 3 years out, am I supposed to be calling them every single month? Not necessarily. But so what are we doing for those? And the reality is, like, if we're out doing lead generation activities, whether it's Facebook leads, whether it's pay-per-click, whether it's open houses, whether it's Zillow leads, the majority of the people that get sent to us that we call junk all fall into this category, because the reality is at some point they're going to buy something. So the answer to that question is we have to own their mind share. Okay, so like we talked about in the Millionaire Real Estate and the lead generation model, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, the red book we call it, we have to get their mind share. And so how do you do that? And what is that composed of? So what we know from the MREA is that most sellers, so 76% of sellers, actually, when you ask them to name an agent, they can only name one. 16% can name two, and then 8% are able to name more than two. So your goal, obviously, with sellers is to be the one agent that when they think of real estate, they think of you. When we talk about buyers, it's about the same, but it's definitely a little bit different. So buyers, 59% can only think of one agent, 22% can think of two, and then 19% can think of more than one. Now, I would say that this could be even higher now. Obviously, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent data is from the early 2000s. I would say that more often than not, I bet buyers can only think of one agent, and yet they're also willing to go look at a house with whoever is right in front of their face. And so it makes it even more important to not only be the one agent that they think of, but also to be constantly giving them opportunities to have a two-way conversation with you. Because the reality is the phone call, the email, the text, all it is the opportunity for you to have a two-way conversation with that prospect to make sure that they're continuing to think of you as the real estate expert and as the source of information. So the way that we kind of look at leads in the Keller Williams ecosystem and Millionaire Real Estate Agent is basically kind of one of two ways. You either categorize them as a met or a not met. And so what do we mean by that? So the goal of every follow-up campaign is to move the lead down the funnel. And what we call the funnel, if you think of a funnel, obviously the leads that are at the top of the funnel are going to be the ones that are further out. And then every time we talk to them and communicate with them, and then time also goes on, the goal is to lead them down the funnel to the very bottom of the funnel and to come out as an active client of ours. And so the way that we categorize those again in MREA is going to be met versus not met. And so what is a met? Does anybody know or have a definition for what a met person would be in their database?
Someone that either spoken to face to face or communicate via like phone.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good one. Anybody else have another definition? I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong on this. Don, are you still with me? What do you consider a met? Like somebody that you would consider a met?
I would consider a met maybe just, well, would it be like Zillow? You go show somebody a property one time, that's a met, right? If you go, like you're at an event and you've met someone that is thinking about it, that would be another met, right?
Yeah, I think all of those could be mets.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's, again, I don't think there's a right or wrong. I do think that what I would encourage you all to do though is identify what a met means to you, and do that. What in my world, what a met would be someone who knows, likes, and trusts me. And I put in parentheses, hopefully as a real estate professional. And yet, the reason I put that in parentheses is that obviously, like, Pete just recently got licensed. And so his friends may not really know, like, and trust him as an agent quite yet. But his goal over time is to make it go from knows, likes, and trusts to knows, likes, and trusts him as an agent. Dawn, obviously you've had your license for a lot longer. So the people in your sphere, your Mets, they should know you as a real estate professional.
I would just say those are my sphere of influence people, like I didn't define it like you did, but it makes sense.
Because then a not met is going to be someone who you have limited information on, mm-hmm. or limited information or time known. So who does not yet know, like, and trust you. And then you could also put parentheses again as a real estate professional. And the only reason why I like to do it that way is because really, if we just met somebody, or to like Marsha's definition, if we've just had like one two-way conversation, we might not yet consider them somebody, they might not consider us their agent. And so we need to make sure that we solidify that process. Now, to Marsha's point, I would consider somebody that I sat down with and had a buyer consultation or a listing presentation, I would consider them to be a met, because I've had the opportunity to show them kind of what I know and what I do and how I work. So when we're thinking about not mets or mets, as we kind of discussed here with those different definitions, the reality is whatever your definition is, if they don't yet know, like, and trust you, whether you just met them yesterday, whether you've never met them, we have to do something a little bit different. So what I like to say with that is that they're new to the database. So again, coming from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, what they talk about in there is once you actually have that first interaction with somebody, then you put them on what we call an 8x8, and that stands for 8 touches in 8 days. And I'm going to pop out of the PowerPoint for a second and show you guys some examples of the 8x8. So what I've here in a second. So where I'm at right now is I am in, can you guys still see that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, command. Okay, cool. So just to kind of show you guys where I got to this. So if we come into the command dashboard here, and then we go over here on the left-hand side and click on smart plans, that's going to take us into this view here. Now you may or may not have those views. And then up here, you're going to click on library. And the cool thing is here within the last couple weeks, they've added some really cool stuff. So before, if you've been in here before, hopefully you all have, you're probably familiar with this view here, where it shows you all of the ones that Keller Williams has made for us. Now, they did recently add this information here, which is kind of cool. It shows you how many agents are using it, what their ratings have been on the different campaigns. So you can see they've put together an 8x8 campaign here. You can click on view steps and it comes up and shows you. So it's going to say, if you go ahead and apply this to a contact, it's going to send a text message that says, hey, Pete Mosier, it's Troy Marsh from Marsh Home Group. Would love to grab coffee sometime. Let me know what your schedule, looks like in the next few days. And then it's going to wait 7 days. And then it's going to send the Let's Grab Coffee email to them. And then it's gonna put a phone call in your to-do list to call them the next week. And then it's going to send out another text a week later that says, just checking in. How's your day going? Any real estate needs I can help you with. Then it's going to add then it's saying you should add them to the smart plan and send them the monthly neighborhood nurture, which lets them know what's going on in their neighborhood. Then the next week is a phone call. And then the next week is a text message that says, what did you think of the neighborhood snapshot I sent you? Pretty cool, huh? Any questions about it? I might flip those just because you may end up talking about that on the phone call. And so then the idea of that, and I apologize, I actually put 8 touches in 8 days and it should be in 8 weeks. So that was a mistake of mine on the slide. But the goal of the 8x8 is really, again, if we think back to that mind share, the goal is to solidify our position in the client's mind as the go-to person for real estate. And so what you're doing through this is, if there was somebody else in their mind when they thought of real estate, this should solidify through the series of events that if they need something, they need to call Melissa to get that information. And so what you would do if you wanted to add somebody who was already in command, you would just add to the smart plan, and then you could download all of that to go ahead and get started. I'm not going to go through that because that's not what we're here for in this class to do. But then this is what just got added here recently, and that is that now agents across the whole Keller Williams ecosystem can actually add different smart plans that they've created. And then you have the opportunity to go ahead and download them and use them for your clients. So, so they have everything from the Facebook paid ads to real estate plan survey and everything in between. There were also other ones in here, and I swear there was an 8x8 on this first page earlier when I was looking at it. But there's all different kinds of smart plans in here. Let's see if there we go. So like here's one on an 8x8 for internet leads. And it's just saying to go ahead and send a text and then send this email and then another phone call, and it gives you the actual whole script to use when you're calling them. And then the link to the monthly neighborhood nurture, the call, again, a whole nother script. Am I catching you at a good time? That's great. I wanted to update you that I just listed another home for sale in blank neighborhood over on blank, and we're having an open house this Thursday, blah, 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 blah. So you're just calling these different leads to invite them to your open house. So again, that's kind of killing two birds with one stone, right? You know you're going to be doing an open house every weekend, so you're going to call all your internet leads and invite them to that open house, for example. Is everybody cool with that? Does anybody have any questions on how I got to this, kind of what's happening here, and finding these different plans?
No, but I love it. I'm glad you shared that because I didn't realize they were doing that and I didn't know they really worked. So thank you.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
mean, this is something that just got added, and I'm like geeking out about it because this is like what I feel like we've kind of been missing. You know,
Yes.
we had like the generic 8x8, but there was nowhere where we could go and see what other people were doing. And then obviously with with the rating systems, it really is gonna over time really help to, you know, let the best ones stand out.
I like it. Thank
And
you.
there's some like this open house one. I mean, look at this. There's 13,000 people using it. I guess that's a KW one. But there's some of these that are from other agents that are getting up there in terms of the number of agents using it. So we should be able to get some really good feedback. And here's a weekly check-in plan with your clients too. So kind of what we were talking about before. So then the next thing to look at, and I'm not going to go back and forth between the slides, is what we call 10 days of pain. And this is a Ben Kinney. He coined that phrase. I don't know, maybe he stole it from somebody else. But this is a very popular plan from him. And the idea of it is that basically, because we know that especially internet leads and Facebook leads, it's really speed to lead, we call it, meaning the first person that gets to them and, you know, really captures that mind share is likely going to be the agent that closes them. And if you're not the first person, then your chances go down quickly after that. And so this is going to feel very intense for a lot of you, and yet it's something that you can use as a foundation. But my encouragement for you, especially for those colder leads, like people that are not Mets that you haven't ever talked to, this can be a good one. So this is what he calls a smart call. So start with getting to know your customer, make sure they have a listing alert set up. Ask yourself what you can learn about the lead from their contact info, review any properties they've looked at, and then turn one piece of contact info into multiple pieces. So what you're going to do is on day 0, meaning the first day that lead comes in, 1 second after they've called, you're going to call 3 times. And then if they don't answer, then you're going to leave a voicemail on the last attempt. And then 5 minutes after that, you're going to text them. Then 4 minutes after that, you're going to email them. This is again if they haven't responded. 1 hour after the first text, you're going to send them another text. 1 hour after the second text, another text. And then the next day, due by 5 p.m., you're going to call again. And then at 6 p.m., you're going to send a text. On day 2, you're going to send another email that just talks about Keller Mortgage and the advantages when you decide to buy. Do you plan to pay cash or need financing? And then day 2 is going to be a 5th text in the afternoon. And that's going to be more again about Keller Mortgage. The 3rd email, if you're ready to move in the next 6 months, we should get together soon so that I can get a good idea of what you're looking for. What's the time frame? 6th text, then another call. So you guys get the point with this. It's pretty intense. That's why it's called 10 days of pain and not 10 days of pleasure, I guess. But ultimately, the idea here is that if you don't get a hold of them within these 10 days, so see on day 9, did I drop the ball trying to make people feel bad? Then you just text them with their name. So Dawn ? And then the last day is, I love texting you. You hate responding. Just wanted you to know I'll continue reaching out until I earn your business or hear something different about your situation.
That's good.
And so then after the 10 days of paying, continue your lead on listing alerts and or market reports, set a reminder. And then if you've made contact and determined their motivation level, assign them as an A, B, or C buyer or a seller client in the database and work it until it's converted to a closing. Continue to monitor search activity and then consider moving to inactive status if they haven't been doing any searching or anything else. So those are a couple kind of examples of shorter term follow-up plans. And then we've got the longer term follow-up plans, and this is not. Maybe. Oh, here we go. So we have the 10-day of pain, and then are there any other systems that you guys use around like the short, like does anybody have an open house follow-up system that they use, or any other Facebook lead follow-up system? Have any of you guys used the Nick Baldwin Facebook lead follow-up?
I had his smart plan set up for some stuff.
Yeah, I just started doing Facebook leads and I started using his Nick Baldwin's.
Have you gotten any response?
I got an interesting response. Well, I literally started this like end of last week. I got
Okay.
and I've gotten one person that I talked to, and then I got one other person where I said, "Is this the best? Is it better to email you or text?" And she sent me a message back saying, "This is for my daughter. Here's her information."
That's awesome.
I think
though.
the mom was getting tired of me bothering her.
Yeah, a lot of times though, they'll say, "Hey, I'm just looking for my daughter. No, thank you." So that's good that she sent her information.
Yeah.
So were you able to get a hold of the daughter?
This literally happened right before I started this webinar. So
Okay,
see.
cool. Yeah, well, definitely. That's fantastic. Anybody else using that? No? Okay, well, definitely make sure. You used to have to go around to 50 different places. Now those Nick Baldwin's smart plan is right there in the follow-ups. Shannon Dager, our regional tech director, also has a plan on there that's post-closing follow-up, which includes a review request, which has really good ratings, and it looks like a lot of people have used that. So definitely check that out as well. So the long-term follow-up plan is going to be basically what we call the 36 touch or 36 to convert. It's been called in bold. And that's going to be comprised of a few different things. And the reality is all of these plans can be tweaked and adjusted. The biggest things though, like I talked about in that short-term follow-up that you don't want to, you don't want to replace with something that's less direct are the phone calls or text messages. I would always encourage you guys to do at least 50% of those touches as actual phone calls. I don't think we have really any like super millennials or whatever we call the next generation Z or whatever the next one is after millennials or Y. But I know a lot of people, they get anxious about making phone calls and they want to text everything. I would definitely say you could probably have 2 of the 4 be text messages, but the goal would be to be reaching out to them directly in some fashion every quarter. So this is going to be everyone in your database. So you're going to do that first 10 days of pain for people that you've never talked to, or the Nick Baldwin smart plan or one of those. And then they're going to go on to your 8x8. So you're going to be giving them that information. And then once they complete that, then you're going to want to put them into the 36 to convert. So that's going to be a quarterly phone call, 26 biweekly emails. So the easiest emails to send out around that are going to be to set them up on a monthly neighborhood nurture smart plan within Command. So that's going to send them updates on what's happening in their neighborhood once a month. You can do it bi-weekly, but I feel like for the average consumer that's years away from moving, bi-weekly might be a little much. But I think definitely once a month is valuable. And then I would recommend the other touch via email every month would be an email newsletter. And we could probably do a whole class on email newsletters, but I think just putting information, doing a quick commentary of the market, you can either use the CBR or the Columbus Realtors, monthly information, or you can use trend graphics or a combination of the two, along with maybe a recent listing and or sale, maybe a vendor spotlight where you're saying like, hey, if you call this painter and mention my name, you can get 10% off or something like that. You could, you could do if you farm a specific area, you could spotlight, a specific business in that area or something like that. And then also links to, obviously visiting your website, search for homes, your app. And then also what I've been putting in mine recently are lender contacts in all of my emails, just for refinances, because refinancing has been a big thing lately. And then you're going to want 2 touches minimum that are event based. So obviously right now during COVID, we've seen some interesting pivots around that. One of the coolest ones that I heard via Mega Camp was where they sent something out to their entire database. I feel like I'm going to sneeze. I'm sorry, guys. Hold on. Excuse me, where they sent something out to their entire database, also ran Facebook ads and did some different things. And they said basically like next Friday, we're going to be giving away a Yeti cooler, a blah, 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 blah. And I think they had like $5,000 worth of prizes. But the cool thing is it was all paid for by vendors. And so basically they had sponsors that paid for those. And then what they were able to do with that is call this number on Friday between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. and in order to enter. And in order to enter, the people had to answer like name, phone number, email, birthday. Do you have any plans to buy or sell real estate in 2020 or 2021 over the next 12 months? And then also, do you know of anybody who's interested in a career in real estate to help them grow their profit share potentially? And so asking all that, this one couple got, I think, over 500 people to call them to enter to win these prizes. And they were able to, I believe they were up to like 20 pieces of business that they felt like they were going to have within the next 12 months. And I think they added over 100 of those people that called were people that they did not know before. So they were able to add 100 people to their database and then apply their 36 touch. Now, once we get past COVID, that stuff I think still could work for sure. But the more traditional client events would be things like movies. You could do, we did like a fall festival a couple of years. We did Ohio State football game watch parties, different things like that. And then you have 4 touches, which would be like a promotional direct mail, which could be, like a magnet, a calendar, maybe a market update report that's just via mail. Or I always knocked those touches out by sending out a postcard about how many houses we had sold year to date, along with invitations to the client events. So you can knock out a lot of touches just around a client event, meaning you can send a postcard saying, hey, we'd love to see you at our client event. Then you can call them and invite them to your client event, one of your 4 telephone calls. And then you can actually call them after the client event and either say, hey, we're sorry we missed you, or thank you so much for coming. And so those are all ways that you can add to your 36 touch. So that's about all I have, and it looks like I've got 2 minutes left. Do you guys have any other systems or things that you could add? I'll flip back to the 36 touch, but anything that you guys would add to that, as I'd love to share if there's other examples that you guys might have of ways that you've stayed in touch. Don't everybody talk at once.
Text messages instead of phone calls.
Yeah. Have you been having success with that?
I did a lot of success whenever COVID first happened, because everybody was at home and everybody was wanting to talk to somebody. But yeah, I've had, and even like I think there was 4th of July and Mother's Day and Father's Day. And so yeah, I've had good luck with that stuff.
So what does that system look like for you in terms of, are you text messaging everyone in your database, or just like your top?
I go through the people, like I can tell, I think all of us can tell who watches on Facebook and stuff like that. And those are the people I really kind of stay in front of. And those are the people I reach out to whenever something's going on. So.
Okay. Awesome. Anybody else? Melissa, did you have something?
Hold on. I'm just old school. I call on the phone. I'm just a big caller, and I normally do very well with calling.
Awesome. So real quick, give everybody, let's role play real fast. Like what would you say to me if I was a past client or a friend of yours and you were going to just give me a call to check in?
Let me think. I would probably just say, hi Troy, this is Melissa from Keller Williams. Hey, I was just checking in. I hadn't talked to you in a few months and wanted to see, I know that you said you may be thinking about putting your home on the market this year, and wanted to see what time frame you were planning on doing that.
Awesome. Yeah, I was thinking about 6 months from now, probably in the spring.
Okay, great. Now, let me just ask you, why 6 months? Why are you waiting till the spring? Any particular reason?
Well, just because, it seems like the spring has always been a good time. I just listing during the winter, it seems like there's just not very many houses on the market.
Yes. I know how you feel. Mostly everybody wants to put their house on the market in the spring. You see all the signs go up, right? But I will say this, in my experience, I've been doing this for about 16 years, and in my experience, this is really a really good time too to do it, because you know why? Because everyone else is putting their home on the market in the spring. That means you're gonna have less competition now. So, maybe we could grab coffee and maybe just sit down and talk about it and just kind of see where we're at and see if you still want to, if you want to wait till the spring, that's great. But I want to just maybe talk about some past clients and show you some things to maybe may change your mind, and you may decide maybe now's the best time depending on your situation.
Awesome. That's great.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other ways that they've stayed in touch with clients?
Troy, let me ask you a question. So in that scenario, would you typically just wait till the spring, or would you typically try to get them to do it sooner like I was?
I think you have to know more about their situation.
Me too.
So, motivation is definitely always a key, especially when it comes to selling, because obviously it's not a super easy process, getting your house ready. So I think people have to definitely be mentally in the right place to get them. I think buying can be a little bit different sometimes if they don't have a house to sell. But no, I think sitting down and talking to them about the fact that, did you know that inventory is at 50% of what it was last year? Did you know what's happening with multiple offers? And I think, this is my opinion, obviously, but I think there's a reasonable chance to assume that at some point the effects of COVID are going to be felt in the overall economy,
Mhm.
and that we've gone through 10 years, basically almost 10 years, 8 years of a really, really strong seller's market, and at some point it's going to move in the other direction. And I feel like that point could be between now and next spring. I don't know for sure. I don't have a crystal ball, but what I can tell you is we do know what the market is today. And so I'd love to sit down with you and talk to you about the market today in your neighborhood and your price range, and
Mhm.
see, if it makes sense to do it sooner, great. If not, I'll be ready to help you out in the spring. Does that sound good?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's so situational depending on people's motivation.
That's what I think too. I just want to know your thoughts.
But I always think in this market, because there's not fewer agents, there's more and more agents, that it's super important to get in front of them, and establish the fact that you're the expert. And that just further, I would feel a lot better about getting that listing in the spring if I sat down with them now, versus saying, okay, cool, I'll call you in the spring.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden they run into somebody like you that gets them to sit down and do
Yeah.
coffee,
Yeah.
and then now you just lost the listing.
Yep.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah. All right, everybody. Well, thank you all so much for jumping on. And if there's anything I can do, as always, don't hesitate to reach out via email. But go check out those smart plans in Command.
Thanks, Troy.
Thank
Troy.
you.
You're welcome. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.